Welcome to Accommodate This. In January 2026, RFK Jr. appointed 21 people to the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee. That's the IACC. These appointments were touted as positive and progressive because 3 of the appointees are autistic, and several of the appointees were considered autism advocates and/or parents of autistics. This marketing strategy was intended to make it sound like RFK Jr. was actually open to listening to autistic voices and moving away from entertaining conspiracy theorists. It implies a willingness to look closer at how autism impacts individuals and families. But is that really what's going on? In this video, I will introduce you to several of the committee members who will directly advise the United States Health Secretary, RFK Jr., on issues related to autism. But before we get into the appointees, let's talk about the committee they've been appointed to, the IACC. The IACC, or Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee, is a federal advisory committee charged with coordinating federal activities concerning autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, and for providing advice to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, HHS, on issues related to autism. Now, the committee was established by Congress under the Children's Health Act of 2000, and then reconstituted under the Combating Autism Act, CAA, of 2006 under George W. Bush, and renewed most recently under the Autism Collaboration, Accountability, Research, Education, and Support Act of 2024, or the Autism Cares Act, under President Joe Biden. The strategic plan of the committee is based on addressing the following 7 questions, which come with 3 primary goals each. Now, I'm going to run through these quickly, but I have to point out that the most recent version of the strategic plan is for the years 2021 to 2023 timeframe. Even though the act was renewed in 2024 under Biden's presidency, there's no updated plan available on the IACC website. We are now in 2026 at the time of this recording, and Trump's administration has yet to renew or recommit to a defined ongoing strategy. Despite the fact that this committee has been working with Congress for going on 26 years, autistic lives have seen little to no improvement. We've been talking about the same issues over and over for decades, and solutions aren't anywhere to be found. This will become real apparent when you see how many of my own videos focus on the very topics that this committee is supposed to address. So let's get into it. Question 1. How can we improve identification of autism? Now, this question is about screening and diagnosis. They plan to address this question by supporting research on how early detection of autism influences outcomes, reducing disparities in early detection and access to services, and developing and adapting screening and diagnostic tools, including tools that incorporate new technologies to increase efficiency, accuracy, and timeliness of identification. Now, to this day, we still have well over 30 autism diagnostic tests available, several of which are designed for specific age ranges, and the average wait time to get evaluated is 12 to 18 months in the USA. If you need information on how to go about getting an assessment for yourself or a loved one, I talk about it in this video up here. I go into great detail about things to consider before getting assessed, so I encourage you to watch it before you go and get a diagnosis. I will include a link for that video and the other videos I reference in the description below. Next, question 2, what is the biology underlying autism? This one's about biology. And they plan to focus on this by fostering research to better understand the processes of early development, molecular and neurodevelopmental mechanisms, brain circuitry, and cognitive development that contribute to the structural and functional basis of autism. They plan to support research to understand the underlying biology of co-occurring conditions in autism and to understand the relationship of these conditions to autism. Support large-scale longitudinal studies to answer questions about the development and natural history of autism across the lifespan from pregnancy through childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and older adulthood. Based on a 2025 Princeton study that identified 4 autism subtypes, we now have a much clearer understanding of the underlying biology, development, and co-occurring conditions, and more. And I anticipate that study will have a tremendous impact on the progress toward this initiative. I plan to post a video on that study next week, so be sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on that video when it is released. Question 3. What are the genetic and environmental factors that contribute to autism and its co-occurring conditions? This is going to be one of those areas that RFK Jr. plans to focus on the most, particularly the environmental factors. But the goal comes with 3 sub-goals: strengthen understanding of genetic factors that influence autism and its co-occurring conditions across the full diversity of individuals on the autism spectrum. Understand the influence of environmental factors on the onset and progression of autism and its co-occurring conditions, enabling the development of strategies to maximize positive outcomes. Expand knowledge about how multiple environmental and genetic factors interact through specific biological mechanisms to manifest in autism phenotypes. In April 2025, RFK Jr. said that genetics are a dead end, and he claimed that he and his team would be focusing on environmental factors. You can watch my reaction video about that here. And obviously, we know that genetics accounts for the majority of factors leading to the development of autism. And real science continues to prove that that is the case. This hasn't stopped RFK Jr. from leading a goose chase for environmental factors such as Tylenol, as he mentioned in a press briefing last year. You can watch my video on that here, too. Question 4. Which interventions will improve health and well-being? So this one's about interventions. Develop and improve pharmacological and other medical interventions that will maximize positive outcomes for individuals on the autism spectrum. Create and improve a variety of psychosocial, developmental, occupational, and educational interventions that will maximize positive outcomes for individuals on the autism spectrum. Develop and improve technology-based interventions that will maximize positive outcomes for individuals on the autism spectrum. Now, RFK Jr. and his team put together the MAHA report, which described their plan to make children healthier. That plan suggested things like food additives and isolation are causes for autism and ADHD, and that those issues could be addressed with diet and exercise. Of course, the report relied on outdated information and tons of speculation, much of which has been debunked. And I talk about it in my video on the MAHA report, which you can see here. But we have yet to see many interventions outside of ABA therapies, other than occupational and speech therapies. However, ABA therapies, which account for the majority of available interventions, have been proven to be ineffective and even harmful to autistics. I talk about autism therapies in my video here. What services and supports are needed to maximize health and well-being? So this one is about services and supports. Develop service approaches and scale up and implement evidence-based interventions in community settings. Address disparities in service provision and improve access to services for all, including low-resource and underserved communities and individuals and families with high support needs. improve service delivery to ensure quality and consistency of services across many domains, with the goal of maximizing positive outcomes and the value that individuals get from services. Due to budgetary cuts for Medicare and Medicaid, and executive orders criminalizing mental health and homelessness, as well as advancements in AI technologies, our services and supports are becoming more scarce, and our outcomes are getting even worse. So check out my video on forced confinement for details about criminalizing mental health and homelessness, or my video on the death of the ACA for details about cuts to Medicaid and Medicare. Question 6. How can we address the needs of people on the autism spectrum throughout the lifespan? Support development and coordination of integrated services to help people on the autism spectrum successfully transition to adulthood and progress through the lifespan with appropriate services and supports. Support research and develop and implement approaches to improve physical and mental health outcomes across the lifespan, with the goal of improving safety, reducing premature mortality, and enhancing health and well-being. Support research, services activities, and outreach efforts that facilitate and incorporate accessibility, as well as acceptance, accommodation, inclusion, independence, and integration of people on the autism spectrum. Unfortunately, many of the therapies available today are designed for children. I talk about these in my Autism Therapies video, which you can see here. Then there's the support cliff that hits when you turn 18 and suddenly are cut off from all supports entirely. To this day, that issue has yet to be addressed, and accommodations are often denied in the workplace, despite the laws in place that are supposed to guarantee them for us. And I talk about several ways employers deny accommodations in this video here. Check it out. And then finally, question 7. How do we expand and enhance research infrastructure systems to meet the needs of the autism community? They plan to promote growth, linkage, coordination, and security of biorepository and data repository infrastructure systems, equitable access to these systems, and inclusion of diverse samples. Expand and enhance the research workforce with attention to diversity and inclusion, and accelerate the pipeline from research to practice. Strengthen statistical data gathering systems to advance understanding of the autistic population, while allowing comparisons and linkages across systems as much as possible. We all know that DEI is a big issue for Trump's administration. DEI, of course, stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and his entire administration, particularly DOGE, focused on attacking those ideals and removing protections from government policies. So at this point, it's hard to say if this question is even a focus for the IACC anymore. But I should point out that the IACC strategy also outlines cross-cutting recommendations, which repeat the importance of this goal. Cross-cutting recommendations include support research to understand sex and gender differences in autism, and support diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility efforts in research, services, and policy that reduce disparities and increase equity for underrepresented, underserved, and intersectional populations within the autism community, and enhance opportunities for autistic people. And we can only assume that these recommendations have been completely ignored by this administration, which has been hell-bent on ending DEI and gender-based policies. But when you consider how little progress has been made so far on any of these issues, it starts to feel like a drop in the bucket, and yet millions of dollars are spent each year to fund this committee. In fact, the 2016 to 2017 strategy recommended increasing the annual autism research budget to $685 million by the year 2020. and the 2021 to 2023 strategy recommended the same dollar increase by 2025. The fact that the amount didn't change, but the timeline was extended, shows that this strategy was not treated as a priority. So, what has the committee been doing with all that money? According to the recommendations in the plan, their focus should have been on lifespan issues, evidence-based interventions and services, and research on disparities and development of culturally responsive tools and services. This chart shows where funds have been appropriated based on each of the 7 questions that we just covered. The committee recommended applying more money toward questions 4, 5, and 6, which are for interventions, services and supports, and a focus on addressing needs throughout the lifespan of autistic citizens. And despite that, you can see questions 5 and 6 have consistently received the least amount of funding since 2008. It only increased slightly during COVID, and we don't have any record of what happened after 2020, despite this chart being taken directly from the 2021 to 2023 report. We also see enormous amounts of money have been put toward interventions, though we still have nothing to show for it. And when COVID hit, funding for interventions dropped. Did it ever go back up? Who knows? But the majority of funding has consistently gone toward understanding the biology, genetic, and environmental factors of autism. In fact, biological studies alone have cost more than double the cost of every other initiative combined. And yet the biggest autism advancements in recent history are coming from colleges and other countries. Something about that doesn't sound right to me. It feels like funds are being squandered, but the committee hasn't published any detailed budget information since 2022. So now that we know what the committee is supposed to be focused on and where the money is actually gone, let's talk about the members. The IACC is composed of 22 federal committee members and 21 public committee members. That's 43 committee members in total. The 21 people recently appointed by RFK Jr., that's referring to the public committee members. Out of the 21 public members, 12 are parents of autistic individuals, and 3 are autistic themselves. However, the only speaking autistic member is currently in high school. I wish this committee all the success in the world, but autistic issues extend beyond high school, and they need to come from actually autistic people, not just their families and caregivers. I worry that they're going to struggle to be heard above the likely very vocal parents on the committee. And being non-speaking is going to make it even harder for those 2 other autistic committee members to be heard. And I hope that they will be given the same time and attention that they deserve to drive meaningful change. But that puts a lot of the responsibility on their shoulders. And part of the struggle for autism advocacy has been a lack of involvement from actually autistic people. I worry that the health secretary is going to hear more stories about how autism impacts non-autistics and in turn base policies on non-autistic experiences because it will be so easy to dismiss the actually autistic members of the committee. But I hope I'm proven wrong. It's also concerning that roughly 14 of the committee members have either unrelated experience or are tied to conspiracy theories and foundations that have turned out to be harmful to the autistic community. That's not much of a surprise considering RFK Jr. and his ties to conspiracy theories about autism. However, it does suggest bias. Without going through all 43 members, these 14 are the members that I think we may need to be concerned about for one reason or another, and therefore need to keep an eye on these 14 members. First of all, Lisa Ackerman. She co-founded TACA. It's an anti-vax organization disguised as an autism advocacy organization. She's also the mother of an autistic individual. I talked about TACA in this video up here. Elaine Cohen-Hubal, an environmental scientist specializing in impacts on toxicity exposure. She may play right into RFK Jr.'s narrative that an environmental toxin causes autism. John Gilmore. He worked to ban thimerosal and mercury use in vaccine creation, two conspiracies that hold no merit, and I talk about both of those arguments in my video on vaccines. Rebecca Hines published several articles related to autism. I was not about to read all of them, but it sounds like she's an advocate for the most part. However, it also appears that she suggests the use of leucovorin, or leucovorin, however you pronounce it, for treatment of autism, which has recently been identified as not effective for autism. So I'm a bit on the fence about her actual motives, and that is why I'm listing her here as a possible concern. Rick Lambert. He's a doctor specializing in acupuncture, mental health, and substance abuse. He does appear to be a good speaker, but other than that, it's really not clear why he's even part of this committee. Leah Lozier, a neuroscientist and analyst of social behaviors who typically approaches behaviors from a negative point of view. For example, she referred to some autistic behaviors as callous or aggressive conduct problems. Now, even if that's hyperbole, it's concerning in an advisory position. Elizabeth Mumper. She theorized autism was caused by cytotoxins and other environmental factors. Again, this plays right into RFK Jr.'s narrative. Honey Rinicella. She's a former leader of TACA and the mother of autistic twins. Toby Rogers theorized about toxicants leading to autism and openly protested against the pharmaceutical industry. Daniel Rossignol. He promoted pseudo-scientific treatments like chelation therapy, and Dan is the father of an autistic individual as well. George Segunas, an expert in bone marrow transplantation and administrator for the HHS. Yet again, it's unclear why he is part of this committee for autism, except that he just has ties to the HHS. Tracy Slepkovic. She wrote a book on supposedly healing her son's autism, something that can't be done. Kyle Walsh, a brain tumor expert. He specializes in toxicology and environmental sciences. And finally, Walter Zaharodny, conspiracy theorist who called autism an urgent public health crisis when RFK Jr. spoke last April, and I've linked to that video in the description. Now, I've provided a link to the full list of all the committee members in the description below, so you can research them on your own if you like. My point is of bringing up these 14 that they appear to be set up to advance RFK Jr.'s plans to promote more pseudoscience about autism and less likely to actually address the concerns and needs of the autism community. And they plan to spend lots of federal money under the guise that they are helping the autistic community. At the very least, they are capable of preventing any positive changes from the other 29 members by just voting opposite of whatever they want. And with only 3 autistic members out of 43, the committee hardly seems poised to listen to autistic experiences and points of view. Now, on the other hand, that's 3 more autistic points of view than they had before. But still, it seems more likely that they're focused on approaching autism as a problem to solve rather than from a supportive stance, and that concerns me. But what are your thoughts? Do you think the committee is on the right track to make positive changes that benefit the autistic community? Share your thoughts in the comments, and until next time, thank you for watching Accommodate This. If you enjoyed this video, please comment, like, and subscribe to see more content like this, or click on the video here to continue watching.